Moving from explorer to warrior, I think that is, in the warrior stage, this is a stage where the battle between good and evil should be on full display in terms of educating, awareness, and interpretation of life. Meaning, the unholy trinity, what is it, Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton has a quote that, we don't tell kids fairy tales about dragons so they'll believe in dragons. We tell them about fairy tales with dragons so they'll understand that dragons can be defeated.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson and SJ Jennings.
Post-Mother's Day edition.
Yeah, post-Mother's Day. And we are talking about dads. And so, yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
Mom, yep. We'll shelf you for now and talk about other things.
It's just what ladies love to be, shelved.
Yeah. We're just so not qualified to talk about motherhood.
No, dude. There's no way.
That, so we're not touching that.
No, we had them.
We had them.
So we can talk about that perspective.
So for all the women who watch the Exploring More podcast, I hope you had a great Mother's Day.
All three of you.
And
I hope you're. No, I think there's more. Maybe 5.
Yeah, maybe this is to work the moms in. This is an episode on being a dad, and I think the opportunity for this partnership of a mom and a dad, moving at sons and daughters together. Moms, we would just say, keep going in your orientation, because that's what your motherhood really needs, your children need, your husband needs. Mm-hmm. And I think there's nothing, we've said this before, nothing more powerful than a man and a woman, a husband and a wife walking with God together. And so the Rendezvous Project is our swing at trying to help marriages, and the deepening community is our offer for women who are on their journey. So hopefully those could be helpful to you, and even this could be encouraging as we talk about dads and the part they're playing. I do think it's interesting, SJ. Just happened the other night. I think I'm winning a little bit more than I'm losing with my kids. And it is amazing how that affects Robin.
When it's going well with your daughters?
As a mom and a wife,
yeah.
It's interesting to me how that, I feel like I'm just talking off the cuff here, but I feel like that impacts her more than when I necessarily see, her hitting home runs, with her kids. I love it. I do. But she really loves it when I am caring and loving and moving towards our kids.
Agreed.
Well.
Yeah. Stephen, I think I've mentioned it before, bought me a gaming computer so that he and I could get online. He lives in Philadelphia, and play games together one night a week. So we've gotten into this game recently, which is goofy, and it's fun. But she'll be down in the living room. Sherry will be down in the living room hearing us cracking up, just laughing, and, and she's only hearing my side of what's going on because I've got headphones on.
Oh, man.
But she loves it, man. I come downstairs and she's like, "You guys had a great time." It's like, "Yeah, we did." She's like, "It's hilarious listening to you." So, so I'm with you, man. Yeah, they love it when we're doing well with
when
we're
kiddos. Stepping into that role well.
Yeah.
I was thinking before the break real quick, I just want to get this in, that, this is another part, another way to say something that we said in episode 1 about being a father, having the namesake, that dad is not the calling, dad is the role, and you bring your calling as a man
glory.
and your glory to the roles of husband and dad
Right.
and other things. And so I was thinking about that and just wanted to say, there's a way things work. And that is so much about what Exploring More podcast, why Exploring More podcast is an overarching idea that we're discovering how the kingdom works, who we are in it, and wanting to bring hope and encouragement and hopefully some practical skills and skill sets to listeners. But this is one of those that has a very, very weighty, very significant, there's a way things work. You sit out at a Durham Bulls game in the sun for a couple hours and I'm not standing up, but your thighs, you're
getting a little crispy,
red.
Crispy.
And it's just right there, man. That's how it works. That's how it works if you stay out in the sun.
Yeah.
And I like what you said in the last episode. If you don't address your wounded history as a man, you are apt to repeat that history somehow, some way as a dad.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it more. Let me say it this way: if you don't know,
that's how it works.
100%. If you don't know that you are a beloved son, you can't be a father to a beloved son.
Yeah, you can't make one and daughter, beloved daughter. Yeah,
Right.
you can't contribute in the way that you should.
The Hendricks quote.
And could, yes.
You can't give what you don't have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So looking forward to
And that's how it works.
episode 2, and we'll dive a little deeper in just a few minutes on the Exploring More podcast. We'll be right back.
Every great adventure starts with preparation, a place to gather, rest, and equip ourselves for the journey ahead. In the same way, Zoe's Base Camp is here for you, an online resource library created to encourage and strengthen Zoe allies on the road to deeper connection, healing, and restoration. A base camp is a staging ground, a place to prepare for the next leg of your expedition. At Zoe, Base Camp is a resource library designed to help you and our allies gear up for the journey of the heart. It is packed with devotionals, discussion guides, and podcasts to help you deepen your relationship with God and one another. When you visit Base Camp, you'll find a growing collection of resources, each crafted to guide you and the men in your circles on your walk with God. Each series that you find below includes a devotion plan with supplemental video content from the Explore More podcast. The devotionals are designed for both personal reflection and small group discussions, helping you dig deeper into God's truth while building meaningful relationships. On the Base Camp website, you will see the various series that we have available. When you click on a series, you'll have the opportunity to download the PDF devotion plan and the discussion guide questions. This also includes an invitation to reflect in time alone with God. Share the plan with your small group and send out the podcast videos for members to watch on their own time. Then, when you gather, dive into conversations about what God is revealing to each of you. Base Camp is more than a resource library. It's a tool for building redemptive brotherhood on the road to experiencing more life, more love, and freedom with God. Start your journey today, explore Base Camp, and reach out to us at allies@zoe.org if you have any further questions.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, talking about the Dad series, and here we are in session 2. There's a way things work. I think so. Your boy, Dave Wilson, is one that I have a bone to pick. And great man, great pastor, family life today.
Crazy story.
Dave and Ann Wilson.
Yeah.
But Dave missed it, man. Dave missed it. Dave, we were talking about being on the Family Life podcast series. Me being on.
Yeah.
And, back to tryouts and all that stuff. Dave cut me.
Yeah.
Because King Me wasn't enough of a family book. Family life today. I mean, family. And man, if I'm not sitting here telling you right now, that is bullcrap.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
And if he's watching or you know him and you want to play this part,
send this to him.
Dave, let's go, bro. Come on, man. Let's arm wrestle over this.
Right.
Because that is so much about what King Me's about. It is recovering your masculine heart so you can step into these two roles.
Change your family's trajectory generationally. Well, it's happened in our families. I get it, man.
Evidence.
I know it.
So,
if I knew where Dave got coffee in the morning, I'd be hijacking him.
Well, I still love the Lions. I'm still going to cheer for my Detroit Lions, and Dave's in Detroit. But I'm just saying, Anybody knows Dave Wilson, throw him this episode.
Yeah.
Tell him he got some.
Come on, man.
Tell him he got some props.
Come on, man. It's all connected.
Let's go.
Because that's the point, right? You can be given a list. Here's the 10 things that makes a great dad, and I may have even heard a sermon series like that at one point, right? So here's the 10 things.
Guys eat that stuff up. Yeah.
Which is great.
Because every Saturday I have a list.
There's my to-do list. I got to do my to-do list.
Every day.
And, a couple of things about that, man, eventually you're going to be tired of just doing the list over and over
Well, we're going to get to that list.
Your heart's not about
it. We're getting to that list in like episode 4.
And a lot of that list is not available to you because you haven't addressed what's in the way of you, being a dad that God calls us to be. So
an oriented man. That's the best. So, all right, enough of Dave Wilson and anybody else who thinks King Me's not a book about fatherhood. You're crazy. So,
I dropped my ball this time, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I was tapping on the table last time. I thought it might be less of a distraction for you, but it is bright blue. So if it's a distraction.
Not till you brought it up. Now I can't not see it. Yeah. So, talking about being a father, being a dad, and, I want to bring up another scripture reference, a theme that's really, really sweet and got Jesus in a lot of trouble was this Abba thing.
Yeah.
Abba Father.
Calling God the Father Daddy.
I think most, I want to rival this thought theologically too, that I think most people just kind of fall to the idea that Jesus was getting away to be with the Father, and it was intense, and he's getting orders. He's somehow it's a subordinate reporting to the superior. I think that may be exaggerated a little, but I think that's kind of the general tone.
Yeah.
And I
am your emissary on earth, so I need to go check in on.
And Jesus was clear that he was about his Father's business. He was about the mission of the kingdom. But that doesn't get you in trouble. When you call him Papa, when you make it known that no, I am the son, he's my dad, and we talk. I am being loved by him and therefore sent.
Loved, encouraged. I mean, what happens when he gets baptized?
Yeah.
This is my son in whom I'm well pleased, right? I'm proud of you, son. Right? I mean, that's setting the bar for what our hearts long for. But I agree.
I don't think that's the only.
I think he's going off with the Father to say, Father, they're not getting it. Peter said something stupid again, like all that kind of stuff.
But there was this sweet moment with Mary
but
today.
It was great, but I still love him. He's like, I know, son, I know. It's just kind of that private conversation that he could have with his dad. I mean, I'm not God and my son isn't Jesus, so don't hear that in what I'm about to say. But my son and I have conversations like that now where it's just him and me, and he comes to me and he says, man, I had a really hard day today.
Oh, I love that door is open.
Yeah,
to
and
him.
I'm
and
with you,
available.
and there's some of that I think with Jesus and Papa.
Yeah. Yeah. He, I think, and I believe this to my heart's deep content, that it was a sweet, it wasn't that there wasn't probably some orders to be
Sure.
clarified and deployment to be done missionally. But I think what got him in so much trouble was the way he promoted an intimacy with God, with the Father.
Right.
And Papa, Abba, was very offensive to just add it to the list of things that offended the religious leaders, who then made Rome know for sure that they're offended, so Rome could be offended. But, this, the way he treated women, the way he talked about the Father, and just in the Pharisees' minds, his disregard for their way, goodness. So that got him in all the most trouble. But I think it's worth noting that this relationship that we talked about in John 14 in the last episode, and then, how Jesus related to God, I think that's the invitation for us to be fathered, to see him as Father, and to see his nearness, not his distance, because that was one of my big obstacles in my walk with God for the first 30 years. The Father was not approachable, or at least not by me.
Well, that was the whole. I found when I first came into a relationship, I could be close to Jesus. I could relate to Jesus. I came to understand, he's the Savior, he's the Messiah. And so I go after my relationship with him and kind of like, the Holy Spirit and, Father, blah, blah. Yeah. But Jesus is my homeboy. Like, I'm in with him. He's my bro. That whole thing, dude.
Yeah.
Which I know is making you feel even a little cringy right
now.
No,
it's
okay,
not.
Okay,
I love it.
That was my interpretation of your.
I love it. No, that is not. That was not a cringe.
But the point is, and I don't want to be disrespectful or dishonoring, but at the same time, to think of them as separate, which, okay, that's fine. But somehow God is, you got to put on your tie when you go into God's presence.
Right.
And you got to be polite, and there's no yelling and screaming and running around and getting dirty feet like you can when you're with Jesus. Just not correct.
Right. Well, I don't believe it is according to Jesus.
Right.
And so I
he's the one that made the way.
I really back to the Father, Heavenly Father. I mean, there's been some bad rap there, especially in the penal substitution cross. He beat the crap out of Jesus, that kind of theology. He sets on the seat of judgment, brings the gavel down, and then comes down, takes his robe off. We've all heard that.
Yep.
And it's going to shape how you see the Father. And if what Jesus did was everything he could to close the distance between us and God, us and the Father. I think that's the better lens to look at this from. There's more theology and conversations about that we getting back on track with this. The other passage I wanted to look at was Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child. Andy can put this on the screen. It's really important as a dad. Train up the child in the way he should go. And the Amplified says, teaching him to seek God's wisdom and will for his abilities and talents.
I love that. There's another one, too, that we've used where it's like in the way of his bent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the Amplified because it's just that. It brings small phrases of definition and clarity
Right.
to certain words in the Hebrew and then certain words in the Greek. So let me read it again. And we've all train up a child in the way they should go. When they're older, they will not depart from it. That's kind of the NIV, King James. Here's the Amplified. Train up a child in the way that he should go, she should go, teaching him or her to seek God's wisdom and will for his abilities and talents. Even when he is old or she is old, they'll not depart from that. Teaching them how to walk with God and bring their glory. That's my
God's
translation.
wisdom to their particular
Teach them how
bent,
to
glory,
and
way.
that is a
Yes.
learned thing that has to be modeled and shown. And so, yes, as dad, I do want my daughters to hear me talk about what God did. How God gave me a Boston Red Sox hat through my friend. How I got a text from Shane the other day. He was at a coffee house, and over the barista station is this big lion's sculptor, like kind of one that I have on my bigger than that though, twice as big. And he just sent me, man, thinking about you. Look at this. And I feel like it was, again, my father seeing me and saying, hey, I see you, and you see me, I see you, you see me.
Yeah. And you're known.
And on and on and on.
You have friends that want to know you, that love you.
Songs, and if you as earthly fathers know how to give good gifts, how much more so does your Father in heaven? So I think that's a part of this, in his image, fathering, giving good gifts.
Yeah.
I think it's part of what we get to talk about. And the two things that are really the most important gifts you can give your kids is your time, your physical presence in that, and your words. And I think that's just one. I can't make it any more grand than that or more simple than that.
Right.
How do you do that? If you can do that, you've got a chance of training up and growing up your child in the way that they should go, according to the wisdom and counsel of God and their talents and abilities. Bringing those together, walking with God, that's the game. That's it. It's not easy. It's just...
Yeah. I wouldn't say my parents, we didn't grow up in a Christian household. I've talked about it a bunch of times. And so I didn't hear that until, I was in my mid-30s. I didn't read that coming to a relationship with God. But I think the way that usually gets interpreted is train up a child in the way he should go, which is to be obedient, to be quiet, to be respectful, to be honoring, and to not speak unless spoken to. And then when he's older, he won't depart from it. That'll make a great kid.
Yeah. Yeah, give him the rules, and then reinforce them, even at certain expenses.
Yeah. And
he'll be okay when he gets older.
Yep. Because we live in a world of rules.
It's a very, very...
There is a way things work, but that's not what that scripture passage is about.
I think the number, bless him, and this is a bad over-exaggeration, bless him, man. But all the two letters I could say is PK.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think there's got to be some statistics out there, Andy, about PKs and their propensity to be off the rails while, their family, their parents are leading churches and leading ministries. So it can't be just the rules, and you don't get a pass, it seems like, when you're in full-time Christian work or ministry.
No.
Maybe even add the variable that not just obeying the rules, but also the way the enemy particularly would like to come after them, which is another reason to be oriented. Yeah. And even then, there's not a guarantee. even then, there's no guarantees that 2-parent household, mom and dad loving them, providing, caring. I mean,
it happened right under our noses, Sherry and I. Like we were so excited about coming back together and getting involved in ministry.
Of course.
And then getting hired at the church. And Stephen's fine. Just focused on everybody else and their walk with God other than our own son. And it did damage.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. So I want to turn into, I think, a healthy perspective as a dad of the masculine and the feminine journey. And we line this stuff out in King Me, David Wilson. We line this up in King Me about these stages. And Andy's going to put them up real quick. There's
foundational one.
There's the linear, the
first,
timeline. So the stages are boyhood, beloved son, which is girlhood and beloved daughter. There's a translation of this that it may not be on the slides since we're going to, just kind of use the ones from King Me. Then there's the foundation with boyhood and belovedness, then explorer, then warrior, king, and elder sage. And over here on the side is this lover stage, and it
overlaps.
It overlaps them all.
Yeah.
It's a huge ingredient in every stage, but it has to also come along and be developed in every stage.
Sure.
So when we're talking about the developmental stages, most of us have had that experience in psychology somewhere, developmental psychology. But this is developmental spiritual psychology, and seeing what should be, what shouldn't be, and then seeing what was and what wasn't, and how that has shaped us. We have formative years. We've observed that in the realm of psychology, and how a little person is developed. The formative years, well, that's that foundation, and that's that beginning. The other two stages that we talk about in King Me are the parts of a whole. So it's just important to know that your boy, your girl, no matter how old they are, there are parts. Think of one of the jumbo puzzles. Big pieces, 8 pieces, 6 pieces that make up. Well, that's how this graph that Andy's showing you. That's how we see it. I have a boy still in me at 60. I have the explorer still in me at 60. I have the warrior still in me at 60, and I'm on the king stage. That piece is being developed, and it reminds me of
even as a boy, you could say a sagely thing.
Yes,
right,
100%. Those are all in you, but the Polaroid hasn't developed on some of those.
Right.
That's where it's happening in the king stage. It's a decade each, and so those parts are really important to know that they have them. So your son or daughter at 10 may come in, and this reminds me of Jason Hamilton again. Your 10-year-old may come in, and he is a wounded lover. The lover boy part of him is wounded because you left. And then he begins to lecture you like a king or an elder sage, and you should have done that, Dad. Here's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really hurt my feelings.
And yet he's in the Polaroid of the boy and transitioning to explorer.
Yeah.
And so all that was going on in real time, and I thought Jason did a phenomenal job as we watched that play out.
He did.
The other part is just the rings of a tree, the Grinch, the rings of the Grinch heart. There's another way to see the stages and of growth. Yes, the timeline, but that the stages. What I love about those tree rings. We were up at Rockbridge back in the end of March with several hundred guys, and we were up at the clay shooting space, which is kind of their
stump dump.
It's their stump dump. I didn't know that's what it's called. That's exactly what it is. And they had that storm, that big, major,
Hurricane Helene.
Federal catastrophic, hurricane and rains. And so there were trees. I mean, I couldn't get my arms around the trees that were up there.
Yeah.
in and around where they let us shoot clays off the backside of the mountain.
Big old trees had come down in that storm.
And they had sliced those.
Mm-hmm.
I could have looked at those. I could have looked at those rings. I could have looked at them for hours. I was absolutely not only sucked in, but how often do you get to see 120-year-old oak?
Right.
From the dissection.
Right.
And so...
Right. When this thing was a sapling, the Titanic had not sunk yet.
That's crazy. So why I was bringing that up, SJ, was as we looked at some of the different ones of those that were up there, and I mean, they had to get some pretty heavy equipment and saws to do it, but you could see ring patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And once there was a scar on an inner ring, it went on and on and on and on.
Oh, yeah.
You could see seasons where the ring was tight, probably the trees protecting, maybe not enough water. You could see when the rings were... I'm just saying,
growing a lot.
That whole image that Andy has shown you on is just growing, even in the significance and the importance of how true that diagram is.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the stages. Those are just. And I think we came up with those 4 ways to look at them because any one of them just wasn't enough.
Right.
And felt like we had to show more. So as a dad, if you can accept that that's true or something very much like it is true for your story, then you're on your way to seeing this is true for their story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we start to dive in a little bit more into, okay, what did each one of those stages need?
Yeah.
What are each one of those stages? I mean, an 8-year-old shouldn't have to learn the lessons of life that an 18 or 28-year-old is.
No, oftentimes those things come earlier than they should.
Right.
But
there's age appropriate.
Right. And there's a way things are supposed to be and the way things happen.
And one of the ways we've simplified it, you can help me remember off the top of our heads, that each stage comes with certain questions that need asking.
Mm-hmm.
Not that need asking, that will be asked.
Mm-hmm.
But need answers.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great way to kind of summarize whether it's masculine or feminine. I want to just kind of get to those questions for a minute in describing this role as a dad that we talked about last week. Man, this is why it's so grand. Yeah. And this is why there is a little margin for error, but not over and over and over again. You can mar and scar that place if you don't give it attention, like you don't water it. But again, if you back something into it, or it gets whacked with something, that's a whole other kind of scar.
Sure.
So there's just effect. There's an effect that we have on this malleable and growing thing that's in there, called their hearts. So back to the masculine and feminine journey, as we've gotten to show you all those diagrams, each one of them still has primary questions. And we talked about in last episode, the first one, the first stage, the first decade, the primary questions are, do you see me? Do you love what you see? Do you want to be with me?
Mm-hmm.
And that was Liam and Jason. And when Jason didn't include Liam or didn't stay home to be with Liam, I mean, it was on steroids. And he was mad at his dad.
He was, man. And it's so funny, too, because I remember that was Friday, I think, maybe Thursday evening. And by Sunday morning, he's like, when are we going to go? I'm going to go home, Dad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a boyhood
that was
thing.
That was the way that Jason went after his heart was,
mm-hmm.
Okay, I made a mistake. Would you forgive me? And would you come join me here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
He wasn't quite
still pretty mad at you.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But I love that Jason won him over and Liam came. But my point is still, these are the core questions. Little girls, little boys. that do you see me? Do you love what you see? Do you want to be with me? The next stage, explorer stage. So how can you answer that? Yes, 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 and yes. And even
As a dad.
And even when you have to go out of town, how can you still answer that while you have to go into areas of responsibility?
Yeah.
Or taking care of your oxygen mask first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes, man, you just need a break.
Yep.
You need to go refuel and recharge, go be with a bunch of guys that you love, that are oriented and walking in this message. And you can come back drop back into the story with some fuel. So, you know, I'm not saying they have to come along all the time. And we actually started to see in the boy and the little girl, this is a stage where the world really is kind of revolving around them. Because look at the questions. Do you see me? Do you want to be with me? I mean, they're little beggars.
And there's nurturing
they're little beggars.
That's needed. Yeah, rattling their
they're
cup.
They're
hey,
little. And
of
of course,
some love for me.
And of course, they wouldn't be if you know there was just a good regular pace of being able to fill that.
Maybe
but
might be anyway.
You still have to learn. Each stage comes with appropriate learning how things work, learning what to do and not to do. You know, hey, hang on, mom's talking.
Yeah,
you know,
I was going to say that's the toughest part, I think, is the transitional stages.
100%.
Going from being a boy to being an older boy.
Yes.
You know,
that's right.
The boy to the explorer.
Yeah.
You know, we saw with Liam.
Yeah.
You know, he's 10, going on 11, 12, somewhere around in there, and still wants to be the boy, which is
when it's
bring me food,
yeah,
and then I'll eat what I want. Bring me more,
and then you take my food away,
and then take my plate away for me,
and to be waited on.
Dad, I want some ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to be waited on, to be cared for, to be tended to, and then, but when you're in those transitions, it's now, you know, you're getting a little older now.
Yeah,
you're not a little guy anymore, and so
there's a way things work at this point.
Things.
And what does the responsibility look and feel like?
And that happens at each one, man.
Each one.
Yeah,
100%.
Sure.
Yep. And so, I think when they get a little bit older, you know, it comes now with. You still bring those questions forward, but you get 8, 9, 10, 14, 15, the explore stage. There really is something that happens to the boy and the girl. And the boy questions are, you know, am I strong? Can I come through? Mm-hmm. You know, do I have what it takes? And I think those same questions are in the feminine. I would add, am I beautiful? Mm-hmm. You know, do I have a beauty? Mm. And not just physical beauty, but the first, components of that. I think a boy does need to, be guided into some more of the rough and tumble, some more in strength and coming to feel it, whether it's competition or it's weights or whatever it might be. Chores, absolutely.
Yeah, which come with the weight of
and
that
there's some
the
things,
responsibilities.
100% things in the feminine heart that little girls can also, I think inherently they want to be strong.
You know,
and have the ability to.
But what does strength mean?
Right.
You know,
create
right
in between those two. In those genders.
That's right.
It's a great question.
They tend to be, not always, but tend to be more emotionally intelligent earlier. Mm-hmm. So that is a manifestation of their strengths. Yeah, I believe. It's funny. You were talking about, you know, just dads and going after, you know, kids' hearts and training them up. And there's a way for boys. There's a way for girls. And it came up at lunch, actually, today, a league of their own. Yeah. Do you remember the dad who raised, the mom had died.
The farm girl.
And raised the farm girl the best he could. You know, I didn't know what to do. So I raised her like a boy. I didn't know what else to do. But what a great story in that. She played baseball. She hit the ball a ton. Yeah. But later on in the story, she finds her beauty. Yeah. if you remember.
I do remember. She gets a dress.
Yeah, there's a dance hall night, and
Madonna, I think, is is the one who
one of the characters
kind of
doll her up, and she gets a dress on, and it's a whole world that has never been available to her. But it's what's so interesting. It just came to my mind because there's those things are just in us.
Yeah.
Right. As boys, as girls, those things are in us.
And time out. I mean, there's a lot in this conversation of gender. There just is, man. Mm-hmm. And how the world we're in, the culture, there's just a lot. So we are talking, in some generalities, and I want to be sensitive to fathers and mothers who. Yep, it's an interesting road, man. Even in those in that baseline idea of gender and identification and all those things.
Yeah, societal norms.
All that, man. So I don't want to be accused of being in the shallow water when we get it. There are very, very interesting, if not very, very important spaces. Do you see me? Do you want to be with me? Even when I'm struggling in my identity, sexuality, even in my immaturity, in my demands. I mean, sounds all nice on a graph and a diagram, but is nothing but messy. In this space. So, moving from explorer to warrior, I think that. And that's probably as far as we can go or should go today, is in the warrior stage. This is a stage where the battle between good and evil should be on full display in terms of educating, awareness, and interpretation of life. Meaning the unholy trinity, what is it, Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton has a quote that, we don't tell kids fairy tales about dragons so they'll believe in dragons. We tell them about fairy tales with dragons so they'll understand that dragons can be defeated. Because as Lewis says, let's not avoid, telling our children about evil because they're going to encounter it.
Right.
Let's make sure that we help them interpret and understand.
Yeah, prepare them
for it. So that's that warrior stage or warrior princess. I love The Lord of the Rings and the strength of some of the feminine characters.
Oh, yeah.
In Éowyn, when she has that encounter with in the castle, when she's kind of wielding her sword. And
with that intensity.
With intensity and turns around and there's Aragorn who kind of hits her sword and she puts a move on him. Mm-hmm. And there's that line, what do you fear, my lady? A cage. And she says, I don't think a shield maiden of Rohan that would be your end. Mm-hmm. I think that this is just a beautiful expression of, and when she says, when Arwen says, when she rides hard, the wraiths are after her, and after Frodo, the ring bearer, if you want him, come and claim him. Yeah. Strength. Wonder Woman.
Right.
These images. Yeah. Right. I think it's important to kind of share this thought that we heard first from Eldridge, that when boys and girls are little, they're not pretending. They're rehearsing. Mm-hmm. So all of that's in there. And how do you, as a gardener of their hearts, as a dad, not kill that?
Yeah.
But cultivate that.
Right.
And train up a child in the way that they should go, in God's wisdom and in their talents and abilities. They're going to try a lot of stuff. You don't know what their glory is and how they uniquely bear God's image. But if I could say anything to dads and could go back but I think I've caught up a bit, but could go back, it would be that. That's the job. Proverbs 22:6, amplified version. Mm-hmm. And to be mindful always of the context of your days. There's evil in the world. They're after your kids like they were after you. And maybe you could help them live less wounded. And by living less wounded, they would have less of a false self and more of a true self. I want to go to another film, The Little Princess. It's one of my favorites, especially of this little feminine heart. And The Little Princess, World War I, her dad goes off to war, puts her in a boarding school. Sarah Crew is her name, Sarah. And eventually they quit hearing from the father.
And the money dries up.
And the money.
Yeah.
Well, the headmistress was just waiting for a chance. I mean, here's evil. Evil's in all of these stories, in all the Disney stories, because evil's in our story. And so she relegates Sarah to the attic, to working in the kitchen, and to doing chores. And
anything that she can do to diminish Sarah Crew's identity and her orientation towards it.
And she watched Sarah Crew before the transactional scenario with the finances. The girls moved towards Sarah. There was an anointing on her. Sarah read to the girls these stories that her dad read to her on assignment, and all of this, man. So I go back to that confrontation when the headmistress hears them upstairs, hears a noise upstairs, goes up in the attic and finds all the girls, but except for a couple, there in Sarah Crew's bed, and they scatter. I mean, here is the mean woman that holds our day-to-day in her hands, can make life miserable. They take off, leaving. Eventually, Becky leaves. No food for you tomorrow. I mean, and there's Sarah Crew, and then she gets this lecture about, do you still fancy yourself a princess? Look around you.
Yeah. Look in the mirror.
Yes, with that harsh tone. And do you hear what I'm saying to you? And then there's this long pause, and Sarah says, yes, but I don't believe it. Come on, girl.
And then she starts, and of course the camera angles change, right? Sarah says, like, all girls are princesses. Don't you know that? Didn't your father tell you that?
Hits the headmistress in the heart.
Oh yeah.
She slams the door and leaves, and then there's the hallway.
Yeah.
So I bring all that up as we close to say that's the job. Sarah Crew's dad in that story infused in her, that something that the world couldn't take, and that is just a brutal reality that is what the enemy and the world are going to try to do, is beat that out of
our
us,
kids,
of us and them.
Yeah.
And so to teach them how to fight and when to fight and what that looks like, I just saw.
And how to wield their strength with care,
right,
intention.
I just saw the end of Christian Bale's one of his earliest movies, Empire of the Sun.
Oh man, it's so great. I love it. I love that movie.
And how he's surviving and how he's reunited with his parents, and it's a brutal and beautiful. What is that word then? Brutal? It's a brutal moment. It's a brutal moment when he's reunited, because he's just still in a daze of the concentration camp he's been in.
Yeah, and in survival mode, and way out over his skis in terms of how old he is versus what he's experiencing and trying to survive. And I remember that moment being, I don't think he said it, but I said it internally. Oh, he can be a boy again.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe not ever the same.
Right.
But he gets to come back underneath the protection of his parents. And,
yeah.
Man.
So just laying this foundation for some sessions and episodes to come. I think, and we've talked about it before, but I think in this context, there's a lot of things we've talked about before, but we get to talk about them in a new context of being a dad.
Yeah. The
masculine journey, the feminine journey. Your wife's been on that journey. You're on that journey, and your kids are on that journey. And so what I said earlier, I want to kind of say again, to the effect that, I believe that I lived my whole life, and so my kids were subject to it as well. But I lived so much of my life reactionary.
Oh, yeah.
Reactionary. And this information provides a roadmap. Not just take the next turn or how am I going to avoid the challenges or problems or pain that's in front of me somewhere. I know it's there, and navigating without lights and trying to miss all that stuff, it's impossible. But I think this gives me a context and gives a dad a context that this is the water you're navigating. This is the trails that you're trying to move on. Your heart and the hearts entrusted to you to love and lead and care for. Yeah. And so I think it can be done. I didn't used to. That.
Yeah.
I just said I don't think there's any guarantees, but I do think there are better chances. Let me say that. Let me say that again. I don't think there's any guarantees, but I think you can change the odds, increase the odds. There are better chances for your children to have those questions answered, and Proverbs 22:6, train them up that way, model it for them, show them a father who's walking intimately with God in not serving God. I'm not talking about ministry. You don't have to be in ministry. That's not what I'm talking about. But missionally are walking intimately with God, experiencing Papa, experiencing that they are the beloved son. I think that is going to have the greatest opportunity, possibility, and hopefully impact in the hearts of our children, even if they're older. Even if they're older, you're going to have to go across some bridges that aren't there.
Well, you talked about navigating water. I mean, there's a time at every body of water did not have a navigational chart.
Right.
Somebody had to go through that water and bump into some crap, to understand, okay, here's where the channel is. Here's where you want to stay away from. Here's a sandbar over here. Well, you learn there's a sandbar over there by running up on it.
Yeah, and there's one ship there.
Or there's already a ship on it,
right?
But then I'm even sitting here thinking about different times in my life as a dad. I didn't handle that water well, and we ran aground and somebody got thrown overboard and it just was not good. But I can go back and say, I can revisit some of those spaces with my son to say, man, yeah, that was not good, and I've written a new chart. I know how to navigate those waters now. Mm-hmm. So let's revisit that moment. Yeah. And here's what should have happened. Yeah. If you have the privilege or the opportunity to be able to do that, I can go back to, I'm thinking specifically one time we were at a church, and this is well before I was a Christian, and he's just fidgety. I think he was like 6. And he's fidgeting around and making noise and complaining about being in church. And I reached over and I pinched him, thinking, because I'm embarrassed because my son's making all kinds of noise. Well, now he's like, ow, Dad, why'd you pinch me? So what I really should have done, and I think I've talked to him about it, was let's just go outside.
Yeah, pick him up.
Yeah, I know this is boring. For a 6-year-old, after a while, being in the main service, that's boring. Let's go out and run around a little bit, get some of this energy out, And even though he was, 6 and he's 30 now, there's hopefully some opportunities to revisit some of that and correct the navigational chart.
Yeah, I love that story. It's not a matter of us not wounding them. It's going to happen. The enemy's that good. But how? Well, run that definition. You've said it from up front several times. The definition of wound and wounding, a wounding moment, a wounding message, but without
is a moment of diminishment, pain, rejection, fear. It can be delivered in shame any number of ways, in the absence of care.
There it is.
Yeah, in the absence.
That's
of care.
the job.
Right. is to be the one that brings the care.
Is to bring the one, even if you weren't there,
or
even
we're
if
the
you,
one.
even if you didn't cause it.
Right. Or
those
even
are,
if you
those
did.
are trickier.
They are.
They're trickier because you have to be in proximity to see something's not right with Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
Susie, or what?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to press in. They don't just come up and say, "I got hurt today,"
Yeah.
or "I got spanked."
Let me articulate the way that wounded me, Father.
Yes,
No,
all
doesn't
yeah. It's a tough job, man. The investigative parts, but it's a job that we signed up for, and I think this conversation and the ones coming, I hope because if you don't know what to do, that's a hard place to be.
Yeah.
But if you have been equipped and have been properly encouraged, you may have to get figured out on the job. But if you don't have a hammer and things require getting hammered, that's horrible.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right tools,
yeah.
And that's where orientation comes in.
Right. If you think you've got to sail through some water that no one's ever been before,
and you don't have the boat for it,
or the charts.
Right. Yeah.
There are some charts.
Let's build some boats.
Yeah.
Because where we want to be able to sail to is just so important with our kids. So, I think that's a good place to.
That's enough for now.
That's enough for now to hang our hats. And yeah, I want the next couple sessions to be helpful at preparing men to respond rather than the old routine of react. And hopefully we can equip and encourage men on these next couple episodes to do just that from the experience that we've had in being a dad. So
amen to that.
All right, episode 2 of the dad sessions are over. Hope you'll join us next time on the Exploring More podcast for more.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.